You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another friendly episode of Friday with Friends. Today's friend and my real friend, Jamila Smith. Hi, Jamila.
Hello, Craig. How are you?
We've had you as a guest before, and I wanted to have you again because you bring so much pleasure. You know, first of all, let me introduce you properly. Jamila is a professional singer. She's been singing on cruise ships for a long time, has had a long career in singing with many big-time professionals in the music industry. And I just feel so lucky to have you here with us and your talent. Welcome, Jamila, again.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here as always.
I know that. And I've been thinking about, after seeing you just recently perform several places, and I have to tell you, Saturday, you gave a little performance before something, and there were a lot of wetness in people's eyes after you were singing, and I'm saying that's very touching. You touch people with your voice. And so then I was thinking about, we know you that way, but I also want to get to know you without the singing. Who's that person behind the voice? And so the title that was I made up for this one was Finding Your Voice Through Silence. Now, when you hear that, what resonates for you?
Probably the first thing that resonates is the power of silence, because silence is no noise. And as a vocalist, there is a lot of performing and, noise from the audience, from the accolade of, being received in such a way with so much love. But through silence, I'm learning, it is a process, that the power of silence, the saying of silence is golden, and understanding that on a higher level, that the power within, there's a silence, as I spoke to you earlier about the outward silence that we have when we just shut everything down and there's no noise. But then it's the silence within ourselves, that where we hear and we can discern, and the power behind that to just elevate your life in such a way that it's so much different than anything that you could even, realize before understanding the power of silence. Yeah.
I like the idea that you brought up that word discern, because when I was experimenting with this myself just a few minutes ago, I was thinking, and I'm sure you realize that silence allows you to get a different perspective. And then in that different perspective, whether you see it as a distance or however you discern that, you're able to see things and differentiate. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you, you mentioned noise. What's the difference between music and noise?
That's not an easy question to ask. Well, it seems like it would be a very easy answer. But noise, for me, is very distracting. Yeah, it's a very distracting. And it kind of, for me, I always use the word like scratches the ears in such a way where it's just within the inside. It can be piercing, noise can. And depending on what the topic is of whatever it is that you're listening to, or it could just be an argument or a conversation that puts you in another place. And so noise and I'm sorry, the first, don't get older. The first part of the question.
Well,
Because
the difference between music and
music and
noise.
noise. Well, music has the capacity to be can be noise as well. It just depends on the vibration of whatever it is that you're listening to. You can take a song that's about violence, and then you can take a song about peace, and they can be noisy for some, even listening to a peaceful part of something, piece of something. But I think the difference is how we interpret it, how we receive it, as whether it's music or whether it's noise, because I hear a lot of the older generation, everything in music now is just noise. But it really isn't. It just depends on the message. And there's a lot of substance that's missing in music, the meaning, the music itself, the variety of sounds, chords, things like that. So music
you just kind of gave me the feeling of it by what you said about the generations. And I had shared with you that your music was touching, and music kind of makes us connect, where noise maybe separates us. When we don't relate to it, it just sounds like noise. Another question. I'm sure you've always been blessed with a beautiful voice, but maybe you aren't always blessed with understanding or experiencing silence. How has silence impacted your singing process? And if so, how?
Singing and silence. And to me, you have to be able to separate them. Because silence is the absence of sound. And singing,
well, let me ask you, let me put it this way.
Okay, maybe a better way.
Yes, that for myself, I find silence to be a creative part of the creative process. And from that may come the sound. In your case, your creative process has to do with sound. Do you find that silence is part of the creative process for you?
Yes. Now that I understand silence on the level that I understand it now, because being quiet and listening and becoming, tuning in, so to speak, I'll use that word, tuning into something that's so much different than my day-to-day. Silence has given me the opportunity to make better decisions, to have a lot more peace. And just recently, I realized that sometimes when I come home and I want to unwind, I go to sleep because I'm a little exhausted. But something through silence came to me as I was coming home the other day and says, when you get home, instead of going to sleep because you're tired, meditate, go into silence. And I actually have more energy as opposed to when I go to sleep, which you would think that I would have, you do need the rest, but I'm finding that silence and meditation actually rejuvenates you without, resting the body. So that was another layer. When you ask me to do this, I'm searching, or I'm waiting for those little nuggets to come to me. And that was one.
That's a very good one.
Yes.
Because in silence, meditation is very much like sleep, except that the mind is very awake. And so I'm getting rest. And I remember something that, who I consider my teacher would be Daddy Janke. And I remember something that she said years ago to me. She said, 15 minutes of silence is like 4 hours of sleep, is that she gets, because she could keep going all the time. She'd get in at 2 o'clock in the morning and then said, let's get going, we got to go here, got to go there. And she was already in her 70s and 80s, and said, wow, that's really something. How do you find that rest? And she shared that it was really silence and just being in that place that really helps her. And so what you're doing is you're saying the same thing, is that by giving yourself that opportunity. And that's what I was so curious about you, because you know how to use sound in such a beautiful way. And then since your life of discovering silence, how has it impacted you? And so those are the types of things I was looking to find from you, is that in your own personal experience, we know how beautiful your voice is, but I was curious for your own personal journey, how this journey of silence is working for you.
As it pertains to music?
Well, and just anything else. Like just music.
personal?
Music is just a vehicle, isn't it, for you too? We're all on some type of journey together, but music is your personal place. But how has this silence impacted your life?
Silence has, I think, there was a quote I read the other day, and it gave way to another level of understanding of silence. It's quiet as a snowflake. Quiet as a snowflake. Now we see snowflakes as there's no two snowflakes the same. As well as when you think about snow, the power of snow and what snow can do, but it's silent. When I've journeyed and I've seen the white ice and the snow, everything that has come from snowflakes, and the power of that. And I don't know if it makes any sense to anyone, but it just hit me in such a powerful way that silence, as powerful as it is, if we allow ourselves to go within, as opposed to just the outward silence, if we go within, that it changes things. It changes everything around us. It changes how you view people. It changes really how I view myself, at the end of the day. It to understand it on the level that I'm learning, and it's a work in progress, I always say, and just to be quiet as best I can, because I come from kind of a noisy, I won't say my family's noisy, but on my father's side, we have a tendency to talk loud. So even in my performance and music, when I am with people, there's a tendency to be very quiet. And so the transition that you see from a date, moment to moment, and speaking to me and having a conversation like we are doing here, and then I get on stage and it's like, okay, who is that person? You take on the alter ego of whatever it is. But as I've learned about silence, I've learned to be quiet, even in a disagreement, even in just my day to day, being quiet it's the best thing. It's like the best remedy for so many things.
That's kind of what I was looking for, is just when you say disagreement, I mean, it's hard to have an argument when one person is not talking.
Right. As Donna would say, when I first came, she said, it takes two hands to clap. And I'd never heard that. And I started putting it into, motion in my life. It takes two hands to clap. If you don't respond, it just fizzles. It really does go away. It just fizzles because, like you said, it has to be both people.
And so also in that silence, and what I'm getting from that is that you develop self-respect. As you get a sense of yourself and you're okay with silence, you don't need someone to hear you. but you find your voice, but you don't need to be heard because you feel okay. And I think that
Yes.
that's what silence does for me. I don't know about anyone
Yeah.
else, that
Yeah.
I'm just okay the way I am. And any communication I have, I want to treasure that and not bring a lot of noise
Right.
into it. I like to connect and communicate.
And one thing I have to do, I have to, in driving, I met Bob and Sister Bob when I was doing Lyft 5 years ago. Yes. And when what I've noticed just in general is that silence is unnerving for a lot of people, because it forces you to go to another place. It forces you to not have to, the distractions of someone talking or music or whatever. And I think if you can achieve the comfort and silence and being able to just be quiet, because there's a fear, I think, of silence for whatever reason, just in some of my, uh, uh, driving, with some passengers and things like that, that sometimes they need music or they need something, because I like silence when I'm driving as well. And, or some type of relaxing kind of music. And there's compliments with the music as well, but I do find in general, I think silence sometimes can be a little scary for some people, but on the other side, it's magical.
So that's true. It depends on what's on the inside. If there's harmony inside of me, the silence is nice. But
Yeah.
sometimes the silence can bring out the noise that's within me, and it starts to come out, and I'm very uncomfortable, and I want to distract from that.
Right.
Is there something else that you'd like to share on the subject of this, finding your voice in silence?
Well, you mentioned something in class last Wednesday, or maybe the Wednesday before, the neutrality of silence, where it's just neutral. There's no positive, and how we can individually, in a moment of silence, it can be positive or it can be negative. So just kind of feeding into what you just said about, what's within us, but silence in itself is neutral.
There's a lot of beauty in that.
Yeah, silence is neutral. And
So,
I think I've made all my little points. Yeah.
Okay.
I had a few things that as they came to me, I wrote them down.
That's perfectly okay. And we want this to be a natural flow. Everything, it's just a conversation between us. It's really good to talk with you at any time, Jamila. Let's close out with a little bit of meditation, kind of my interpretation of what you've shared with us today. Is that okay with you?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So just let's all sit comfortable. Who's ever listening, find a position that you can sit in for some time without having to move around or be distracted. Maybe you want to take a couple breaths. And just by doing that, just by inhaling, I'm inspired. Inhaling and inspired, it's two names for the same thing. And I'm inspired to go within, into my little silent place. And just like you had mentioned earlier, of no two snowflakes are similar, yet they're so beautiful. I myself am like that, intricate patterns. Unlike anyone else, and beautiful nonetheless. In fact, the beauty is in my singularity. The beauty is in my singularity. And likewise, all my companions, and that includes everyone I run into in my daily life, they're also likewise beautiful in their similarity. This gives me a good sense of myself, self-respect. And self-respect is the essence of finding my voice. I can find my voice and not even make a sound. Because I recognize my own beauty. I recognize the beauty in those that I meet. And not just whether or not it causes a little flurry or maybe a little mushy ground underneath, or even hinders my vision. I just see the singular beauty of each individual snowflake. I take a breath, and I take this thought with me. Om Shanti.
Shanti.
Jamila, thank you so much for sharing a more quiet side of ourselves. You're always on stage, and it's nice to see you just like this, person to person. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
It's always, I'm so grateful to be here.
I'm grateful too. Thank you, Mita, for everything. Bye now.
Thank you, Mita. Bye-bye.